Headed to the near sideline, one man to beat. Makes the move at midfield. Coming to the near side at the 30. He's at the 20. He's at the 10. 5. Touchdown, Kentucky!
Here we are, y'all. Another episode of Believe in Kentucky. Aaron Gershon from the Cat's Paws. My name is Vinny Hardy. My guy Jalen Whitlow is not here for this episode. We're coming to y'all live, courtesy of Facebook and YouTube and the Believe Podcast Network. So if you haven't subscribed, go ahead and do so. Subscribe and follow, and you get notified every single time we go live, or every time we put a video clip up on YouTube. You get all that good stuff. So appreciate everybody tuning in. It is week 0 AG games this weekend, man.
That is correct. A couple of games this weekend, and obviously the whole country starting up next week. So it's super exciting. Obviously, fall camp is over at this point. It's not quite game prep, but it's close. It's that time of the offseason. Everyone's just ready to play someone else, hit someone else. So it's exciting that it's finally this close, and 10 days from now at Kroger Field, getting at it.
That's it. Southern Miss comes to town. We'll talk a lot about that next week. We got a couple Southern Miss guys scheduled to hop on and do the little preview and get their thoughts and that little, behind enemy lines perspective. So y'all be sure to join us next week for that. This week was more, like you said, fall camp is over. So it's kind of like walkthrough type stuff, not quite game plan in yet. Kind of a little transition time, right?
Exactly. Obviously they've been kind of banged up pretty good this camp. Get some guys healthy, but also, finishing that preparation, still getting some work in, and not quite game prep, like you said, but dotting some T's and crossing, or other way, dotting I's and crossing T's. We were talking before the show. This is going to be a cold game for both of us. Both of us are on the final stages of colds here. So apologies if I mess some things up tonight. Hopefully won't. But but yeah, crossing some T's, dotting some I's on some final prep this week, trying to get some guys healthy and fully ready to go for next Saturday.
That's it. A couple of weeks ago, I did the same thing. I think I was fussing about how, the whole 2 plays from 9 and 3, you got to finish, and I said dot T's and cross I's, and I was going to use that clip. I was like, no, I ain't even speak properly. So I'm just going to. And look, I had no excuse. I wasn't even sick and said it wrong. At least you can blame it on your code. And
we're going to choose to do that. We're going to choose to do that.
Yeah, so it'll be cruddy and congested sounding for both of us. But y'all bear with us, and we'll hope to get our normal voices back next week. So
yeah.
But yeah, games this week, week 0. Guys banged up. Harley Gilmore, hated to see him be out. And is it looking like the season now? Is it kind of?
It's hard. I don't think it's necessarily the season, but a good chunk of it. I've heard 10 weeks probably, which that would have started last Saturday when he went down. So yeah, you're looking probably early November, late October at the earliest.
And he was tearing it up too. Everybody just, rave reviews and, just how he was progressing and flashing and, stacking good days. And you just hate to.
Yeah, you hate to hear it for sure. And, and the good thing is they do have depth at wide receiver, but you can't afford to lose too much more before it becomes an issue. But Fred Farrier having a really strong camp, and then the emergent, Anthony Brown-Stevens back for a sophomore year. That was a guy they kind of thought was going to have the freshman year that maybe, if healthy, Harley Gilmore was going to have. It didn't quite work out that way, but they're hoping maybe that comes this year.
Yeah. And it was cool hearing him talk about, and look, that's the case with everything. You can't have perspective until you get perspective. And it was cool hearing him talk about the perspective, the experience, the game slowing down. So he's a sophomore. He's still young, but he's older, and
that's right.
Was helping the young guys and still learning from Macklin and those guys. So it's cool kind of seeing him, progress and advance in his career too.
Yeah, no doubt about it. And again, it's a wide receivers room that I think you have 5 guys you can really trust, given what you just said about AB there. And then Fred Farrier is just the guy that they have raved and raved and raved about. And I mean, like I think I said it a couple weeks ago during that open practice. I saw it firsthand. I mean, he absolutely balled out that open practice the Saturday, caught a couple deep passes, was winning his one-on-ones consistently. So excited to see exactly what he's going to bring to the table. He's a guy that probably was a little overlooked when he signed with Kentucky, just given the fact they added Macklin, and you obviously bring back Dane Key and Barry Brown in that room. We have a new receivers coach, new coordinator, but guy who, had some production, not a ton, but some production at UAB coming home from Frankfurt. He's going to be ultra motivated to excel here. And so I think it's a very deep receiver room still. You would love to have had been, 6 deep with Hardley, but injuries happen. It's part of the game. Again, it's more so. I'm more worried. I wouldn't even say worried. I'm more curious to see how that's going to affect things at running back than I am receiver. I think they can, as long as those injuries don't pile up. Gilmore would have been a luxury to have. It's probably not going to happen for a while this year. Maybe, not what you wanted for Hardley's perspective, but maybe Kentucky gets a break out of it, and they get to put a red shirt on a kid they're incredibly high on. But it's all going to come down, not all going to come down to, but it is absolutely imperative that one of Demi Sumo, really two, but more so one of Demi Sumo Karnbay, Jason Patterson, Jamarian Wilcox become a guy you can heavily rely on at that running back position.
Yeah, and I heard good things about Patterson early on, but then as it progressed, nobody really asserted themselves and took hold of it. DSK, hopefully, him being the veteran, maybe he can just kind of, and he's been more the third down type, the guy, the backfield type, but maybe he can just kind of add that, more every down type to his game, in this kind of semi-emergency situation. Maybe he can kind of adapt, switch it up a little bit.
Yeah, I'm just curious to see how. I mean, obviously, we know what he can do as a receiving back, and even lining up in the slot. I'm just curious how it's going to be. Give it to him on 3rd and 2. How does he do? Right? How does he fare when he has to go get those gritty yards inside zone? Just power football, right? That's kind of what they were expecting Chip Trayanum to do for them, even if he wasn't going to be a bell cow, which I know they were talking about platooning. And I've heard DSK has had an awesome camp, but you just, again, it's one of those, let's see it on Saturdays. But I just wonder how that's going to play out, because Chip, it sounded like the strength of his game was he can be ground and pound, get those gritty, tough yards. I mean, we saw it at Ohio State last year. That was kind of his role. He obviously scored that 1-yard touchdown, I believe, as time expired, or it was an untimed down. I forget exactly what it was, but it was a walk-off touchdown at Notre Dame. Like, those are the type of yards, I think Kentucky was hoping they were going to get from him this season, and they'll get it hopefully eventually. But, at least for the first couple of weeks, if not longer, they're going to have to look for it somewhere else. And, DSK is probably the guy that has the frame and the experience to get it done. So we'll just have to see if he's capable of doing it on Saturdays.
Yeah, absolutely. And as we teased a couple weeks ago, we're going to get into our game by game picks and predictions for Kentucky, and then our playoff teams. Before we jump into that, AG, I think, news-wise, Kentucky-wide, not just football, flipping to basketball, you were there at Great Crossing.
Yeah.
Malachi Marino committed and chose Kentucky over Indiana and all the other schools. So now can Mark Pope get a top recruit? That noise can kind of die down. Can he get a guy to stay home? That can kind of die down. That's what I was alluding to last week when we had Jeff Pecora on here, because look, we know our fan base, we like to worry. We like to panic. We like to not be happy unless we're worried or panicking or refreshing our phones about something. And at first, well, can he build a roster? Can he build a roster? No. And I kept saying there's no need to worry about that. I was like, if we get the Big Blue Madness, we got 6 players, then we can worry. But that was not the case. We got 12, still got, potentially 13, depending on what they do with that last spot. So then it went from, can we get a roster to, can we get Jasper and Malachi? Even though Cal wasn't recruiting those guys, Pope comes in way behind, trying to build a roster and a staff and juggle, trying to gain ground on, Jasper and Malachi. And so we get the news Friday that Malachi commits. And so there's one less thing to worry about. We'll see what's going on with Jasper. That still changes minute by minute, but cool to see the big fella in for his game, the way Pope plays. Pope is a big, you don't see many big men coaching. It definitely kind of fit what Malachi was looking at, and it was just a nice match, and it was definitely appealing to him, and he made the decision to stay home.
Yeah, no doubt about it. I think that was a very interesting dynamic. I didn't even think of, honestly, until someone brought that up on Friday last week. So, that probably served Kentucky well. Obviously, Pope playing here and being able to sell that for the first time, in the 25 class to a highly regarded possible McDonald's All-American recruit. The fact it works is huge. And, keeping these guys home that are in your backyard. Look, even if that's just something, maybe we'll see if those guys are going to be stars, right? It's impossible to know for sure. Mm-hmm. I think Jasper probably is more just upside and more likely to pan out as that star player than Malachi is, just from people I've talked to, coached with him, coached against him type of thing. Mm-hmm. But when you're a new coach that's coming in preaching the importance of having guys who are from Kentucky, be I forget the exact phrasing you used at the opening press conference. I think it was the soul or something of the roster. I don't exactly know it, but making it clear you're still going to go after the top freshmen, and you happen to have 2 top 25 guys within, from 20 minutes of your campus. Like you gotta close and win those out. And, he's 1 for 1 so far. It seems from everything I've heard the last 2 weeks that momentum is rising on the Jasper's front. Again, those recruitments, who the hell knows? I mean, tomorrow you could be leaning toward Louisville, and we haven't heard Louisville's in it. Like, it just is what it is. So, but for now, I would feel pretty good about it. If I'm a Kentucky fan, again, that could change tomorrow. It could change in 5 minutes, but it's very, very important to keep those guys home. It would be a tough, it wouldn't be the end of the world. Because again, I've heard from multiple sources that have been around those guys that neither are those locks, like the guys at the top of the class, that like AJ Debance, who's obviously probably going elsewhere, the Boozer twins, Darren Peterson, who's probably going to Kansas. Like, those are the kind of the sure lock guys of this class. So, Jasper and Moreno probably aren't there, but they are guys who have a chance to be there, and they are in your backyard. Like, you got to close on them, and it'd be a hell of a start for Mark Pope and his tenure here to close on both of them in the month of August.
Yeah, and some of it, all this, this whirlwind of activity and coming in, hitting the ground running, getting the staff and getting the roster, and getting Malachi. Still haven't played any games yet because the season hasn't started. But I think there's going to be some guys that maybe, let's see what Jackson Robinson does in his system. Let's see what those type of guys do. And then when they see them succeeding, and if they see them putting up numbers and balling out and, being able to excel in his system, that will help him as well. He hasn't had that luxury yet because he hasn't.
That's right.
I mean, they saw him at BYU, but they people probably still maybe waiting and seeing. The jury's still out of what he's going to do here. If I'm a recruit, maybe I might be waiting to see. Well, let me see what Jackson does before and if it goes like he hopes and dudes do well, then that'll be another kind of springboard for him in his favor.
Yeah, I don't disagree at all. Obviously, BYU, I think last year being in the Big 12, definitely that got him with the credibility he needed to get this job, right? I'm curious I am curious that, like, if BYU doesn't make the jump to the Big 12 and you're Mitch Barnhart, you might love everything about what Mark Pope stands for, even some of the things he's doing, but like, could you really justify a group of 5 coach, but obviously able to go and do some damage in the Big 12, which is the most comparable basketball conference to the SEC, is huge. So I think that was a good start. And now, like you said, I agree 100%. Let's see what those guys do in Kentucky Blue, where the lights are brighter than anywhere else, and they really, like, everyone's watching, and everyone's gonna be judging you every single game, good, bad, ugly. You're going to be under a microscope. So let's see how the team fares and how guys succeed, like you said, in these offensive schemes and all that. See what the wins and losses are, and maybe that'll do even better for the 26th class. But to start off 25 without having played any games with 2, 4, 5-star guys in your home state, pretty good.
Mm-hmm. Speaking of wins and losses, the schedule is officially out and intact now, so everybody can see the dates. There's a few flex dates now too, which is a little bit different.
I hate that.
I bet you do.
Come on, man. Tuesday or Wednesday. It's not that hard.
Mm-hmm. So, of course, the buzz especially Kentucky, especially Arkansas, but SEC-wide was the return date. We see when Arkansas comes back to play Kentucky, February the 1st. But it's a little bit of a gauntlet. You can't be looking ahead to Arkansas because you got at Tennessee right before that. So it's some tough stretches there in that schedule, man.
It's a damn good league. It really is. And absolutely. Tennessee and Arkansas in the same week. I mean, that's a bear. I'm looking through it again for some refreshers. I mean, those Tennessee games are pretty close together too. They play them January 28th, and they'll play them 2 weeks later. I hate that they're both midweek games, by the way. What are we doing with that? Why is that at least not one Saturday? I don't understand.
Got to go to Memorial Gym on a Saturday this year.
Yeah, that's right. So, Vanderbilt on a Saturday, but whatever. I don't get that. But, there's some brutal stretch. I mean, you have a Tennessee-Texas back-to-back. You have let's see, the one you mentioned there with Arkansas, that's probably the toughest stretch right there, honestly. Tennessee, Arkansas, Ole Miss, South Carolina, Tennessee, Texas. Ole Miss is going to be a lot better this year. I don't think people realize how close they were to fully turning it around in year 1.
Yeah.
Under Chris Beard, that roster is even better this year. You got to go down to Oxford midweek after all the energy that's going to be from the Tennessee and Arkansas games.
Mm-hmm.
You go to South Carolina comes here. They've given you a hell of a hard time since Lamont Paris has been there. And then Tennessee the next game. And then you go to Austin. They're going to be revved up to have Kentucky basketball there on their campus. So that's the stretch for me I'm looking at. I mean, and then even after that, you get a quick reprieve, quote unquote, with Vanderbilt. And then you play Alabama in Tuscaloosa, go to Oklahoma and host Auburn. So that's a pretty big gauntlet from January 28th to, and even before that, just to keep going, man. Alabama at home on the 18th, the first Vanderbilt game, and after that, that's when it really starts going. So it's a hell of a slate, and they have I like the non-conference slate. I mean, I don't love the Clemson game. We've talked about that ad nauseum. But it's still it's a challenging, obviously, when anytime you have Duke and Gonzaga on there, Louisville should be better. Ohio State should be better than they were a year ago. So it's a fun schedule.
So Aaron Bradshaw will be.
That's right.
It's his return or, rematch or whatever you want to call it. So he'll be amped for that and probably have it circled. Have you been to Clemson before in any?
No. Yeah, that is the one aspect. I like going to new places. So we'll have that. But I'd rather go to Chapel Hill, but that's all right.
Yeah. So, everybody can kind of see what, you knew what most of the games were, but now it's stamped so you can, get a good look at it as far as that goes. Yeah. Speaking of Kentucky Blue, you mentioned it. Have you had a Kentucky Blue Light yet? Or we got some beer just being sold for NIL purposes. You haven't got one yet?
Not yet.
So, of course, they'll be in stores and wherever they're being distributed at. And, it's just another creative way to fund the collectors and get some money going towards all the sports. So, it's maybe Kentucky was behind, maybe they were a little slow, but now they're trying to catch up. They're trying to lean into it, using marketing and doing whatever they got to do to get in the game, man, because this is what the game is now.
That is exactly right. Why not? So that's a cool idea they had.
Yeah, for sure. And look, I'm just hitting all the little nuggets before we get to the meat. And you've been your Yankees guy. Can't not mention your guy Aaron Judge getting the 300 home runs faster than anybody. I noticed a few days ago.
He just hit 2 tonight, so he's ridiculous, dude.
The fact that he did it almost a season faster than anybody, like 132 games faster than whoever's record he broke. I forget who it was, but he was, was it even 1,000 games or less than 1,000 games?
I'm not exactly sure, but I mean his numbers this year: 47 home runs, 117 RBIs, 334 average, 465 on base percentage, 1.1. I mean, it's like Barry Bonds. It's without the steroids. It's crazy what that man's doing. So that he's fun to watch night in, night out.
Yeah. So we hit our other teams. We talk Cowboys, we talk Giants, we veer outside of Kentucky here and there. And so for a milestone like that, I was like, man, I saw that a few days ago. I'm like 300 home runs, and when it was that much faster than the next person, that's impressive. Because they've been playing baseball for a long time. A lot of guys have done a lot of things, and nobody has hit 300 home runs that fast. Into almost a full season faster. That's ridiculous, like you said. And look, you watch him every night. I'm not even a Yankees fan, but I was impressed. And you see him do this game in and game out. So that's unbelievable. And he could play defensive end for your Giants and in a pinch.
Yep, or tight end, or I mean, he's 6'7", whatever he weighs, just a behemoth of a human being.
Yeah, for real. One last thing, man. I gotta give a little love to Matt Moderno. He hosts Believe in Wizards. He was the first ever guest on this podcast, and he had me on Believe in Wizards. I think the Wizards were looking possibly back when Tata was coming out. He was on the draft board, so he had me on to talk about Tata and all that kind of stuff. And so you and I had the luxury covering Kentucky, talking about Kentucky, that if one sport's having a bad season, well, you got another sport that's doing well, things of that nature. Volleyball's won a national championship since we've been doing this podcast. We had a 9-16 season with COVID. That was rough for Tony Duck and myself to talk about that every game. But you had other sports that are doing well. But when you're doing a podcast for a pro team that's had a lot more lows than highs, like the Wizards, you gotta tip your cap, because Matt's really objective, and he's a DC guy. He's a Wizards guy through and through. But the reason I'm giving him love is because he didn't do it in a poll like we did. We did our little poll about Pope and Bush, 30 runs, 35 threes, who would do, and we thought that was a pretty good question. He put out for the Wizards, he said, what would happen first? Would the world win 2 gold medals, or the Wizards win an NBA championship?
Oh my gosh.
What happened first? And I'm like, that's at minimum 8 years. If the world won the next 2, which I don't think they will, they're coming. France is coming, Canada's coming, Joker's still over there for Serbia. But if the world won 2 gold medals, or the Wizards won NBA championship, what do you think would happen first?
Oh God. The NBA is hard. It's just still like, it's the same. It's not quite. It's better parity. Like, it's not Cavs Warriors every single year, but it just feels like it's still like outside the Nuggets and Bucks who broke through for a year. Like, it feels like the same group of teams for the last, I don't know, my entire life. Like, I feel like it's only been in my lifetime. I feel like it's either been Golden State, Cleveland, Boston, San Antonio. Am I missing anyone like that? It just is in there year in and year out. San Antonio obviously is in, maybe they're on the way back with Wemby, but it's been a while. But like outside of the year, that Denver and Milwaukee,
the Heat got some.
The Heat, that's the other one. That's what I was looking for. Yep, the Heat. And Dallas has been in the mix, obviously, but like it just feels like it's the same group of teams. Is the world every year the U.S. seems more and more. They're weak, not weaker, but they just feel like they're more on the ropes than they've been in the past. So I'm going to go with the Olympics, honestly, until the NBA proves me wrong and we see some more winners. Because as a Knicks fan, I'm in this. I mean, obviously the Knicks have been a playoff team the last couple of years. Jalen Brunson's the best player, I think, outside of maybe Melo in my lifetime that I've gotten to watch, game in and game out. But yeah, I mean, I feel bad saying it, but it's just hard to win in the NBA if you're not one of those perennial. The Lakers are the other team I was thinking of, by the way. It's just like if you're not one of those staple franchises the last 20 years, like you ain't win. It's been tough.
I think I've leaned Wizards. I don't think the world is going to win the next 2 gold medals.
Yeah, I don't know if they can win the next. I don't think either are going to happen anytime soon, but
so
that's just how it feels. I'm more talking out of frustration as a.
Oh yeah, I got you. So at minimum, they've got 8 years, but I'm thinking more 12 or 16 before the world gets 2 gold medals. Even as old as I am, I was little. The Wizards, they were the Bullets back then. They went to the finals, lost one year, won the next. I think it was like 79 or something like that. So it has happened. I think Matt's a little bit older than you, so he hasn't seen a lot of good. John Wall, the first couple of years, they got a decent little playoff run. That's been the height of it for them recently. But I'm gonna say they're gonna get GM in there and draft right and get your stuff together and put a team together that's capable of winning a title. I mean, what were the Warriors before they became the Warriors? The Warriors used to be terrible. I mean, you got Steph and Clay and all that, but they had won back with Rick Barry back in the 70s, and prior to that, I mean, the Warriors hadn't done anything before they put together this 4 titles that they've won or something like that. So we've seen the team go from nothing to, like you said, everybody getting tired of having them in the finals every year. So I'm saying Washington will get it together
and get one.
Do that before the world wins 2. So, but I just thought that was a cool little question. One. And hats off to Matt, because you had a season of struggle, and then you had an off season of draft. What are we doing? What's going on? Back to the season, and he co-hosts with Jahadi White, the big center who used to play for the Wizards out of Georgetown. So they do good stuff, man. But that was just a cool question, and thought it was worth kicking around. So we had a little fun with it, man.
There we go.
Kentucky, game by game. Southern Miss coming in here on the 31st. And so we can see where we think the Cats are going to be at the end of this 12-game season, man. So
Yeah, look, Southern Miss brings back bad memories, but they're not losing that game this year. I just the importance of it, they're not losing that game this year. So they're starting 1-0.
I think so too. Southern Miss they were pretty bad last year.
Yeah, they are supposed to be better this year, but not better enough.
No, and Kentucky has put themselves in position to beat the teams you're supposed to beat, and this is one of them. So
I'm just thinking. Remember, this was supposed to be at Akron until they had a little schedule flipping where Akron's now playing versus Ohio State, and Southern Miss was supposed to go there, and now Southern Miss obviously coming here instead. So I'm just thankful I'm not driving to Akron next week. No offense to Akron. I don't know anything about it other than LeBron James, if I'm being honest. But I don't want to drive 5 hours week 1. So I'm happy to be home and playing Southern Miss.
That's true. That's a good point when you put it that way. Yeah. I forgot about that whole swap thing too. You're
right.
That's
yeah. So happy at Southern Miss. Not obviously. I think I've heard. I honestly I'll have a lot more answers for you next Wednesday, but I do know they've upgraded at several spots. They have a coach on the hot seat, so there's urgency, but they're not losing that game. I'd be stunned.
Yeah. So 1-0, and then you jump right into conference play with South Carolina coming to town, and we talked about them earlier. They've had a number and everything. It's ridiculous. I mean,
they have
across the board, not just football, but
basketball the last 2 years.
Yeah, goodness gracious.
And really, they gave Cal issues his whole tenure here, especially in Columbia. But yeah, man. Again, we've talked about it for the last 6 weeks, whatever it is. Like if they lose that game, it can go off the rails, and I think they know that. I think you look at Carolina defensively. I do think they'll be a little bit better this year, but offensively, I just saw someone put out their projected starting offense, and all the quote tweets are from South Carolina folks, and they're like, "This is the worst wide receiver room I've ever seen in the history of South Carolina." And if that means that their biggest weakness is possibly what's going to be Kentucky's biggest weakness early, which is the pass defense. I like that already. I already was picking Kentucky, and now I kind of like it even more. So I do think Kentucky wins that game. I think it'll be – I don't think it's going to be a blowout. It never really – even when Kentucky has beaten South Carolina outside of like the 2018 game here, the 2020 game here when, obviously Carolina had already decided Shane Beamer was going to be their head coach and they weren't really playing for anything. That game has been extraordinarily close most years, or at least within 2 scores. So I'll say it's within a score or 2, but I think Kentucky does get it done and starts 2-0.
Yeah. It's time to kind of right that little, speed bumps we had against them the past 2 years. And like you said, they know how important this is. And, Stoops can say he likes Shane Beamer and all that, but it's killing him to lose to that dude the past 2 years with superior talent.
No doubt.
And so, they're not looking ahead to Georgia either. They're just all about taking care of South Carolina, and they got the defense to do it, and they'll just kind of throttle them and just keep them in check and move on, get that first conference win, and get ready for Georgia week 3.
Yeah, and they're not going to win week 3.
No.
I mean, look, I actually do think they'll be more competitive than they were last year. I just think, and Kirby Smart said it himself, and I'm not. Again, we'll get to our 12-team playoffs in a few minutes, but Kirby was talking about how it's the least depth they've had, and look, they got hit hard by the portal, but it's also Georgia, so they have the reinforcements. They have, I think, the biggest thing with Georgia, which I don't even know. Obviously, Seston Bennett played at a very high level, but I don't think you could say it when he was the quarterback there. I think they have the best quarterback in the SEC, if not the country, in Carson Beck. So I just think that's going to be a little too much to overcome. Obviously, it's going to mean a lot to Brock Vandagriff. It's going to mean a lot to, Dumas Johnson, but they're just not good. I think they'll hang around. I don't think it's going to be 51-13 again, but you're probably looking at a 2 to 3 score loss at home and falling to 2-1.
Yeah. Are you seeing the schedule on the screen now? Is it showing up?
There we go. Yes, I am.
So, I've been struggling with stuff, so I'm trying to get this stuff together. So everybody sees it. We finally get some kind of visual that's correct. So 2-1, and then September 21st, you get Ohio coming in.
They'll win that game, but that's like an emotional wreck spot, right? Where you just had the Georgia game, probably going to take an L there. And you're going to Ole Miss the next week. And, Ohio is a very strong program that I believe is supposed to finish near the top of the MAC. So I do believe Kentucky will win that game. But, that's a trap. You can't fall in it. I don't think they will. But, that is a scary little trap that they have there.
Yeah, it's kind of like anymore here lately when you see Old Dominion pop up on your schedule. You know, and speaking of South Carolina, they better watch out for that in week
Yeah,
one.
Old Dominion's a good team. Yeah.
I think they get past Ohio too. It might be one of those. It's close, you know, 6 minutes into the fourth quarter when you're like, my God, put them away. And they kind of, and we've seen a lot of those games in the Stoops era that, you know, they win it, but, you know, remember the Chattanooga game that was way closer than it should have been.
That's right.
There was a Vanderbilt game they won 14-7 with Benny and Josh Allen.
2018. Yep.
Yeah. So I think this bad as we hate to say it, could be one of those type of games, but
it's a trap.
They'll squeak it out and get to 3-1 in the Oxford.
Yep. And going to Oxford, I don't like their chances there. Obviously, you know, it is interesting that is Ole Miss's first game of SEC play, and Kentucky's already going to have two SEC contests at that point. That could be a good or bad thing. It could mean, look, Kentucky could be pretty beat up and, you know, ready for their bye week, which will be after that, or, you know, they could just be prepared for the physicality where Ole Miss isn't quite there yet. But, you know, this is a massive, massive year for Lane Kiffin and Ole Miss. They obviously have went all in on this roster. It's very experienced. There are a lot of seniors, a lot of fifth, sixth-year seniors. So I don't see them losing their first SEC contest. I think Kentucky has a chance to hang around like they did. Well, they should have won the last time they were in Oxford, but I think I think it will be a game. I don't think they're going to get blown out down there, especially given everything I just said. But I think pretty highly of that Ole Miss roster being in Oxford. I think Kentucky goes into the bye 3-2.
I'm right there with you. And that Ole Miss schedule is kind of cakey. There's in Tennessee's and Missouri.
Oh yeah,
the cake schedule.
Kentucky's their first test of the year.
Yeah, and just coming from down there where they had them beat. You know, you had Levis get hurt and you had the procedure call or whatever. But I think it's just one of those. They're just going to come up a little bit short again. I don't think they get blown out, like you said, but I think they're 3-2 heading into the bye. And speaking of the bye, they got 2 bye weeks this year, and they cushioned them about as much as you could. You know, coming to Vandy and Murray State off of byes, you can't get much.
You can't get much better. I kind of like the offseason Vandy had. The problem is they're in the SEC and they're Vandy. So I like some of the moves, like adding Jerry Kill on the coaching staff, adding Diego Pivaya, the quarterback from New Mexico State, as their quarterback. I actually like some of the things they did, but they also got, talk about getting hit by the portal. As good as some of the moves they made were, lost that whole incredible they really had a really good wide receiver trio, and they're all gone. They're all 3 of them transferred out. McGowan, Shepard, and Humphreys. So that's just going to be too much to overcome, and Kentucky will win that game at home and be 4-2.
Yeah, and like this progress could be notable if, like you said, if Vanderbilt was in another conference.
I think they could be a 5-7 team in the ACC, which is not great even in the ACC, but I'd have to look at their SEC schedule, but I don't see them winning an SEC game off the top of my head.
They're at Missouri, Alabama at home before they come to Lexington, so they're already going to be. God. We talk about Kentucky being beat up going to Oxford. Look at Vandy coming to Lexington.
Yeah, no, they're gonna be beat up. But I obviously have Kentucky at 4-2 after that,
and headed to Gainesville, where
it's a huge game.
Desperate Billy Napier, and this will be kind of the start of their brutal schedule.
Yeah, this is, sitting at 4-2, if you're Kentucky, it's pivotal, because if you lose that game, you kind of know, even though the playoffs we all know are probably not going to happen, but the players are never going to think that way. They'll know, hey, any loss that we have now pretty much takes us out more likely than not. So that Florida game, obviously, Kentucky's had the upper hand in that series. Florida, I do think, has a chance to be a little bit better than last year, but I don't get why Napier didn't hire a play caller. They ended up getting hit pretty hard by the portal as well. Mm-hmm. They did make some good additions, but I mean, losing Etienne obviously to Georgia, losing Princely, the outside backer to Ole Miss, like they lost some star talent. I don't see it with Florida in that schedule, and I think Kentucky has so much confidence in that game and put so much into that game. They take it personally. I have Kentucky winning that game and moving to 5-2.
I'm with you, and Kentucky's the second game of their murderers row. They go to Knoxville, then they get Kentucky at home, and
that's right. But and that's what's weird. They usually beat up on Tennessee, even though when Tennessee's better than them.
That's what we talked about.
Last year, Florida kicked the crap out of Tennessee, and Florida was no good, and Tennessee was a very solid team. So
Billy Napier has a better record against Tennessee than he does Kentucky.
That's right.
Go figure. But we'll take it.
That's exactly right.
5-2, and then you get Auburn.
Yeah, that's I think that's the most important game left. I mean, Tennessee is because of the rivalry, but that game is so important because it's a marquee opponent that's beatable in your own home.
Yes.
You have to win that game, and that's been the game. That type of game is what's killed Kentucky the last couple of years. They lost it to South Carolina in 2022. I get Noah Levis. You still got to win that game. Carolina was crappy. Vanderbilt, I count more as losing to like a Southern Miss than it was. But last year was Missouri, and obviously Missouri took off and had a way better year than any of us could have expected. All the credit in the world to them. But at that point in time, that wasn't known about Missouri. They were coming off a loss to LSU, who obviously is a good team, but still coming off a loss, 5-1. Kentucky's also 5-1 at that point. Figure the winner of that game is in good position to finish second in the East, if not third. And Kentucky is the early lead, and we all know what happened after the fake punt. So I think that game is so important. I look at Auburn. I see an improving roster that's still not quite the roster Hugh Freeze wants. And I think if this is going to be the year that Kentucky hopes it can be, I think Mark Stoops is preaching the same thing I'm preaching. And I'll be optimistic. And I truly would flip a coin on it. I think it's going to be like a 3 or 4 point game either way. But for sake of having fun and being optimistic, I'll chalk it up as a win. And UK move into, I believe it would be 6-2 with that. It was 6-2, right? 7-2?
Yeah. 6-2.
6-2. Okay.
And I think the same thing, Peyton Thorne has caught all kind of grief ever since he transferred to Auburn, but they do have better talent around him coming into this year.
It's getting there. The roster's getting there.
Yeah, and Hugh Freeze is, still an offensive guy and can, kind of get back to his reputation. But you're at home is we got robbed with Chris Rodriguez down there in the end zone, and he didn't get credit for the touchdown down there in Auburn a few years ago, and you just gotta avenge all that stuff. And like you said, beat a name team at home. We've been close a lot of times.
It would be like the LSU game in 21, where LSU that year wasn't very good, but they were LSU. Like that, yeah. So very similar situation for me.
And Auburn is coming. Oklahoma at Georgia, bye week at Missouri before they come to Lexington.
Yeah, so that's a meat grinder.
And everybody's gauntlet, everybody got that gauntlet portion. It's just a matter of where you are in the gauntlet when you play teams sometimes. And
that's right.
And Kentucky's had times when, like Tennessee last year came to Lexington after playing Alabama and whatever. They were in their gauntlet, and you got to capitalize on that. And this is another chance for that. They're coming on. They're in the hard portion of their schedule. You've already kind of went through yours. You've already played Georgia. You've already been to Ole Miss. Can't be looking ahead to Knoxville, but just handle Auburn at home. 6-2. I'm with you. I got long-winded, but yeah, I can see that as well. Next week I can't pick it. I can't pick a win because
No,
the
you
history.
got to prove it. You got to prove it.
Yeah.
And I think Tennessee, as much as no one wants to hear it, they're a good team, man. That Heupel's done a hell of a job. He was the exact right coach when they needed it. I'm not saying they're playoff good nor national championship good, but they're a very good football team that's not going to lose much at home.
Yeah, and they're always a step or two above, no matter how.
That doesn't matter.
Wherever Kentucky is, Tennessee's we're always trying to reach and grab them. When Tennessee has been down, you go back to the former, and of course they won a few, but there were years during that streak when Tennessee was down bad, but Kentucky was down worse. And it's
you just couldn't make it up.
The year,
and even when Kentucky's much better, man, like 2018, Kentucky was so much better than that team.
Man, yeah.
They didn't just lose; they got their asses kicked.
Sure did. Yeah, 24/7, man, unbelievable. So you get out of Knoxville, head into your second bye, and Murray State comes to town on the 16th.
That's a win.
Yeah,
so that's 7-3. We're both at 7-3,
mm-hmm.
And then I think we're probably on the same page with this one too. I think at that point, Texas is going to be playing for a playoff spot. They're not going to be able to afford to lose. I'd have to check the schedule. That might be their last home game, unless obviously they could host a playoff game, but that might be their last guaranteed home game.
So they got to go to College Station to play A&M.
So there you go. That's their last. Yeah, they're not losing that game.
Yeah.
So 7-4.
Yeah. And like I'm with you. You can paint it in hope, and maybe they're looking ahead to Texas A&M.
No shot.
No, look, first time to play in Texas A&M in a while, and no.
They passed all the tests you needed last year.
Yeah, 7-4. Playing.
I think we're going to be in agreement the whole way, aren't we?
I think so. Playing a 9-2 Louisville, 10-1 Louisville, whatever. Like last year, kind of maybe. And
so I am picking Kentucky. It's very similar to the Tennessee Kentucky debate. And I'm like objectively, I thought Louisville last year. I thought Louisville was going to win that game against Kentucky going the week of the game. I saw that. I didn't love the quarterback play from Louisville last year, but Garendo, what's the other running back's name? Jawar Jordan. Loved what those guys were able to do. They had and some of them are back this year, but the pieces on defense, Gelati, like there's some really good players on that team. The receiver room was loaded. I look at this year, obviously the receiver room's pretty good. We'll see what the deal is with Colin Lacey. The wide receiver transfer from South Alabama. Obviously, you don't want to see anyone go down, but he's going to miss a good part of the year. We'll see if he's back to himself or back at all for the Kentucky game. They are putting their eggs in the basket of a quarterback that has just not stayed healthy his entire college career in Tyler Shough. I mean, he has literally never gotten through. He's been playing college football since, I think, 2018, and he has never gotten through a year healthy. And, he's done some good things when he's been in there, but he's not been in there. So I just don't know how you put all your eggs in that basket. If you're Louisville, I think they missed on an opportunity to get a more established guy in the portal. It's not like there weren't a ton of them out there. Mm-hmm. And so I'm very curious to see how that plays out for them. I just think they could honestly just take, even with the ACC being what it is, they do have to go to Clemson this year. Miami goes in there. Like it's not a hard schedule by any means, but it's not the same. They have to go to Notre Dame. It's not the same cakewalk as they had last year. It's a little harder.
Mm-hmm.
But all that to say, the SEC ACC thing is real. And I'm actually less of a believer in this year's Louisville than I was last year's.
Mm-hmm. So I'm with you. We both agree. This is just a do what you're supposed to do type of season. If you just do what you're supposed to do, you can be 8-4.
That's pretty damn good.
There's only been 2 9-win seasons in my life. We just saw them recently.
And they could do it with a bull win at that point.
Yeah, exactly. And so they haven't had an 8-win season. This would be the first time. Had a lot of 7-5s. do what you're supposed to do, and it's still an improvement over the past 2 years.
That's right.
Dot your I's, cross your T's, do what you're supposed to do, and then that gives you a chance to pluck a superior team. It gives you a chance to upset an Ole Miss or a Tennessee or a Texas. And I mean, it's long shots, but you have a shot. But you can't slip up to Vanderbilt and South Carolina and not just beat the teams you're supposed to beat. Handle Auburn, you got them at home, and 8-4 is right there. It's just got to go get it. Got to go get it. So I mean, we didn't have a lot of contrast and differences. We were right there on the same plane. But I would take 8-4. I would not.
Oh my God, that should be celebrated if they go 8-4. It should be. Who knows if it will be or not, but it should be.
Right, yeah. Because look, I remember the 1-10s and the 2-10s and all that. So
you go 8-4 in this SEC at Kentucky. Pretty good.
Mm-hmm. That's it. Had a couple comments. We flashed them already. Got to beat South Carolina. Sammy.
Must.
Michael saying beat Tennessee. We all hope for that.
So.
Yeah.
Don't think so. We'll see.
And this is the last time Tennessee's on the schedule for a while. So it's no, I don't think.
They'll play them next year. It's all the same SEC teams next year.
Oh, is it next year?
Yeah, just
so we get them at home next year. Oh, my bad. Okay.
Same. Yeah. So Texas will come to Lexington. That'll be interesting. UK will go to Auburn. Yeah.
Okay. So then after that, does it start switching around?
That's correct.
Okay, my bad. So we got one more. I thought this was the last time.
One more guaranteed.
Next, the last time, and then okay.
And then we'll see what happens.
So last trip to Knoxville for a while.
Possibly. Yeah.
Okay. Yeah. And like you said, if you could get them down there, it'd be the first time in front of a crowd since '84, since Jeff Piccolo was in uniform. So
it's been a while.
Yeah. So we got 12-team playoff, first time ever, brand new. How we see that looking? You get the top 5 conference champions from the committee, and then the next 7 after that. So how do you?
Yeah, and a group of 5. My group of 5 at 12 because they have to get in is. I went through it all, and it's the same team that was a group of 5 last year, and that was Liberty. First of all, the Sun Belt's, I think, there's some teams in there that make it a little bit of a stronger conference than maybe the American, because I was thinking about Tulane or USF. And then you have Boise State's another one to keep an eye on, whoever wins the Mountain West. But Liberty has their quarterback from last year back, in Caden Slater, who would have been the number 1 quarterback in the portal if he had left. A guy who had a 32-6 touchdown interception ratio. So that's my group of 5 team is Liberty. At large, 11. We'll go 11 through 5. 11 through 5 would be the at large teams. I have Notre Dame actually cracking it this year.
Ooh.
I think the schedule kind of allows for it for them. I really have always been a big fan of Riley Leonard at quarterback. I think being at Duke, hard to really see that full potential, but man, if Notre Dame could go in week 1 and beat Texas A&M and College Station, that's a hell of a resume win. And then the rest of their schedule, man, it's almost the only worry is is their schedule going to keep them out? It's Northern Illinois, Purdue, Miami, Ohio, Louisville, Stanford, Georgia Tech, Navy, Florida State. It's a big one at home, Virginia, Army, and USC. That is not, outside of Florida State, Louisville, A&M, and maybe USC, that's a very doable schedule for them. So I have Notre Dame in the 11 slot. Michigan, the defending champs, I think they take a step back this year. But I do think they get in at 10. LSU, and then here's the SEC gauntlet. LSU at 9, Alabama at 8, Ole Miss at 7, Texas at 6. That's how good the SEC is. They're going to get a lot of teams in, and people are going to cry about it, but it is what it is. And then as the at-large, the last at-large team, I have Oregon as number 5. I think Ohio State and Oregon play each other. I believe that game's in Columbus. So I just kind of flipped and went home field. If that game's in Oregon, I would flip that pick. I honestly don't have it in front of me. And then My 4 conference champions, Utah in the Pac-12 or not Pac-12, the Big 12. Exactly. Just sounds weird to say, but if you look at the Big 12, Texas would have been the heavy favorite. Oklahoma probably would have been second. I think you can make a case for Oklahoma State in there. I think you make a case even crazy enough for Kansas, even Kansas State, but I really like Utah there. Florida State as the ACC champ. Ohio State is the Big Ten champ. And as the SEC champion, number 1, Georgia.
Yeah. I got App State making it.
Yeah, I like them too. I had they were right there with Liberty.
And I mean they've for that level. I mean they got tradition. They've been around a long time and been playing good ball for a long time. I had Oklahoma State sneaking in there. Like you kicked them around too.
Yep.
I got Tennessee doing what they're supposed to. I got Tennessee sneaking in.
I didn't even give them that much credit.
It killed me to do it, but got Utah in there as well, like you. Yep. I mean, the same thing. I mean, Whittingham, you just know what you're gonna get with him, man. Oregon, I mean, it doesn't matter. You know, Pac-12, Pac, whatever it was, Big Ten.
They're gonna be really good this year.
Yeah, they're gonna. It's not gonna affect them this transition into a new league and coming to the Midwest and all that. No, they're fine.
They'll be fine.
Ole Miss schedule, I think, allows them to do that as well. You know, if they do what they're supposed to, it's not. I mean, if they lose, it's gonna be like you shouldn't have lost to them. But I think they take care of business and then they find themselves in this mix. You know, because there's 12 teams and they handle business, they're gonna be in there. You know, it's kind of the way I saw it. ACC Gauntlet, I guess now for me, Texas, I got them, you know, of course, doing what they're going to do. Alabama, I got them in there.
I think they'll get it too.
Mm-hmm. And then of the top 4, of course, I got Arizona winning the Big 12.
Ooh, I like that.
Florida State winning the ACC, and you know they're going to be so butthurt over not making it last year. They're going to be there this year. Ohio State and of course Georgia. So,
there you go.
So, and we get to see it all unfold. The waiting is almost over. You know, Saturday at noon, Florida State and Georgia Tech from Ireland. I think Dublin is where they're playing that game. So it's here, and we'll be rocking and rolling from now until like April before it dies down, and then baseball kicks in maybe till June again if all goes well. So
hope so.
Good stuff, man. Good stuff with the picks. You got anything in the works from thecatspause.com? I forgot to mention. Everybody check it out.
It'll be just game coverage coming up, which is exciting. So we'll get there. We'll get there next week.
Absolutely. So appreciate everybody tuning in, checking us out. Subscribe, like we talked about, to YouTube, Facebook. Go to shop.believe.com. Get yourself a Cat Daddy shirt. We got merch. Usually I put that in the comments, but I forgot to do that. We got Cat Daddy's t-shirts. Got Everest to Eddyville t-shirts. If you know, you know. But look, AG's looking forward to it, man. We'll have actual games to talk about from this coming weekend. We'll talk about that next week. Preview Southern Miss next week. Get a couple of Southern Miss guys on here to go behind enemy lines, so to speak. And look forward to week 1 with Kentucky playing those Golden Eagles. But we get a little wet appetite with week 0 coming up. So
that's right.
Good stuff, man. I always appreciate you. Appreciate everybody that listens, takes the time. And for Aaron, my name is Vinny. We both stuffy and snotty.
Yeah.
We sound a little better next week, but we appreciate y'all bearing with us. And we'll hop on off of here for this episode of Believe in Kentucky, brought to you by the Believe Podcast Network. Have a good week. We'll see y'all next time.